Silence does not mean indifference. Just because you haven't heard from your ex in a time frame that makes you comfortable doesn't mean that they're over you, they're moving on, and that you'll never hear from them again. Yes, there are reasons that your ex is not contacting you. And yes, it could be the obvious, they're messing around with somebody else or they're trying to get over you, but I find that oftentimes that's not my experience. In my life and in my clients' lives as well, I can see that oftentimes their ex is held back by a few different reasons that might take you off guard. See, whether or not you think that your ex is legitimately trying to get over you, I've got news for you, man. A, it doesn't happen overnight. And B, just because she's not reaching out to you, he's not reaching out to you, doesn't mean that they are not thinking about you. There are often hidden reasons, psychological defenses, if you want to get real fancy with the terminology here, for why they simply will not reach out to you. Let's dip into the psychology of post breakups just a little bit. What I want you to understand is that rumination does not necessarily equal reconnection. Rumination means thinking obsessively about something, right? So even if they're thinking about you nonstop 24/7, it doesn't mean that they're going to reach out to you. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking there's no way they're still thinking about me. They've moved on. They've, whatever else. But the truth is, you're still here obsessively thinking about them. You're watching this video. What makes you think that they aren't feeling the same thing just a little bit? Especially if the breakup has just happened, like very recently, I can almost guarantee you that they are sitting with some sort of uncomfortable feelings. Now, they don't want to do that any more than you want to do that. But the fact is, it takes time to get over somebody, and you're not going to healthily move on overnight in a week or two. Here's something obvious. Your ex is probably waiting on you to reach out to them, even though they're the ones that broke up with you. And assuming you haven't cheated on them, beat on them, did something like this, they're the ones that gave up on that relationship. They're the ones that said, you know what, I don't like the way you're acting. I don't like where this is going, whatever else. And they broke up with you either as a means to get away from you and to find somebody who they think is better, or, and here's the kicker, or as a means to punish you. That's right, folks. We still have grown adults who break up with each other as a means of punishment. The type of people who break up with you as a punishment do it out of ego. They don't do it to really teach you a lesson or anything like that, because if they wanted you to learn, to teach you a lesson, they would work with you on this. Breaking up with somebody is supposed to be a permanent thing. It's supposed to be a we're broken up, whatever else, and we both go our separate ways. Even if we never talk again, that's fine. Have a good one, and we're done. Instead, what are modern breakups like? Modern breakups are like, hey, we're going to break up for a while. I'm going to go who I want for a while. And then when I'm done with this little fling, I'm going to come back to you. And then, if you haven't learned your lesson yet, if you don't treat me like I think I should be treated, then I'm going to go to somebody else. And I'm going to keep doing that for a while. I'm still going to text you, though, because I need to make sure that you're still around, because maybe this new person doesn't work out. And there's very seldom any finality when it comes to a modern breakup. That news is great if you're trying to get an ex back, but that news is horrible if you're trying to have a long-term, successful relationship in the modern age. Why? Because it means that there's a lot of people, an unknown group of people, who are still obsessed with their ex, who, if their ex would text them, just message them one time, you'd be history. But oftentimes you'll find that the same people who break up with you as a means of punishment are the same people who will also expect you to grovel, to message them back, because after all, the breakup was your fault. And of course, that entire reasoning is nothing but ego. And if you feed that ego, watch how they treat you. Them not reaching out to you, if they're a little bit smart about breakups, right? If they've been through this a couple of times, if they've got a few years behind them, can often be a mixture of two things. One is a fear of rejection, and the other is power preservation. See, you're both wanting to win the breakup, right? That's power preservation. You both want the other one to message you first. That's power. Those are games, okay? And then the fear of rejection is, even if I reach out, I want to know that my love will at least be accepted. It'll be heard, even if it's not reciprocated. So you have fear of rejection plus power preservation equals silence. They don't want you to reject them, but they also feel like you're the one that should reach out to them. And again, if they're the ones that broke up with you and you're the one that's not being toxic, you're the one that didn't cheat on them, you didn't beat on them, whatever else, that means they gave up on the relationships. Regardless of the problems in it, you are supposed to be able to work through problems inside of a relationship long term, no matter what they are. And if they are willing to give up on those things, that's fine. They need to go find someone who's more compatible with them, and you do too. But like I said, modern breakups don't work like that. Modern breakups break up with each other because they want to punish the other one for not acting the way that the other one thought that they should. So what do you get besides somebody who's not willing to work through things, who's not willing to reach out and repair that relationship? You get silence. Honestly, that other person is just doing you a favor. You need to just move on. That's the hardcore truth. If they're willing to just shut you out and shut down, and by the way, I find this problem most prevalent with the modern women, where they will absolutely shut down. They won't communicate with you whatsoever, and they think that it's because of something you did in the relationship. But again, the truth is, they're the ones that gave up on it. You're supposed to be able to work through anything in that relationship. That's the idea. So what do? They break up with you until you've learned your lesson. And what do? They go out and they find somebody else and they his brains out. Then whenever the new guy's all dried up and his shine is kind of worn off from being so new, they'll look back at you. They'll text you back and say, hey, how have you been? Because they're not really sure if they want you back or not. They just want you in their orbit. They want to know, or at least their ego does, that they could still have you if they wanted you. Now let's take it to the other side of this, where your ex feels horrible about the breakup and they might even realize that it was the wrong decision. But here's the problem. They often feel regret and sadness, and they may even resent themselves for having acted the way that they did. Now, I find this behavior most common in men. All of these feelings, because we're so great at handling feelings, they sort of bottle up inside like a bottleneck and nothing comes out. Silence and stonewalling is usually what the girl gets. And it's unfortunate, but it's not because the guy necessarily hates her or wants to take anything out on her. He just doesn't know what to say. He doesn't want to make this worse. And of course, this could go for women as well. Don't forget, in every single one of these videos, in the description above is my link. Let me know what you're going through. Schedule something with me. But let's get straight to the meat of the problem here. The main reason the modern person, the modern woman, the modern man does not reach out is because of their ego, because of their pride. Unfortunately, that is the world that we live in today. It's the thought of, if I reach out first, I lose. And again, if you were the one that got broken up with, it's not for you. It is the other person's job to make that relationship right again. But again, what I find with the modern women is, if you ask them whose fault the relationship is, who's supposed to lead that, who's supposed to fix all the problems, they'll say, oh, it's the man's job. And what that does is that takes all the accountability and all the responsibility of them acting any certain way whatsoever to save that relationship, to put in any work at all towards your future together. And what the modern woman really thinks whenever she thinks about working on her relationship, she thinks that if I get on my knees and suck his dick hard enough, he'll make sure that I'm not accountable for any of this. He'll give me princess treatment. He won't make me responsible for anything. That's the modern woman's idea of the ideal relationship. It's, I'll suck your dick when I want to, and in exchange for that, you literally do everything and take all the blame for all of it. I'm convinced that they think this way because they didn't have a father at home that showed them what an actual masculine man leading looked like. And here's the real gut punch. Your ex, and this goes for men and women, their pride in themselves could be stronger than their love for you. Afterwards, what they'll do is they'll post things on their story aimed at you, or they'll make these little posts that, are definitely aimed at you. And of course, they're never nice. They're never like, oh, I really miss this person. I wish they were back in my life or anything like that. It's always some pointed, subtle jab. It's very typical to see passive-aggressive behavior in your ex's posts after the breakup. And again, people who act with passive aggressiveness do not know how to communicate. I don't care what gender you are. Grow up and learn to face your problems as a couple. If you cannot do that, that's okay. You're not a bad person. You're just not ready for a relationship. And by the way, you're supposed to grow up seeing this same attitude in your grandparents and your parents. But guess what? How many of our grandparents and parents grew up and didn't get divorced? I'd say it's actually a minority of us. So what did we actually see? Well, we actually saw, because most women initiate most divorces, we actually saw mom, grandma get fed up with grandpa or dad and just say, you know what, I've had it, I'm done. So men learned to walk on eggshells around women, and women learned that they can run the house if they get real bitchy, real mean, and refuse to communicate. That's exactly who's running the show now. It's women with their ego out of control and men who will absolutely not grow some and lead. Now we have women who will say, well, I would love to be in my feminine and him in his masculine, and I'd love for him to lead and I'd love to follow him, but he's just not man enough, right? He doesn't make me feel feminine enough. Now look, there's a slight bit of truth to that. There really is. Now look, there's a grain of truth to this. And when I look at the modern man, all I see are low T levels and mommy issues. But especially when it comes to traditional men, they try to lead. But the thing is, we're not going to argue with you. And that's something that modern women just don't understand. They think that if they're leading and they cause problems, that the man is going to argue with them or say some witty line that, snaps them back into freaking line or whatever else. But that's not what submission is. Submission is you are going to lead. Just like I could give somebody the keys to my car and say, okay, you drive. And if you choose to drive it into a ditch, that's your problem. But what does the modern woman do? The modern woman sits in the driver's seat with their hand on the wheel, foot on the brake, and says, here, drive. And then you have the guy in the passenger side trying to hold over and be like, okay, come on, let me go. Okay, come on, let's go. No, stop. No, I don't want to. No, stop. And the modern woman thinks, yeah, well, if you're man enough, I wouldn't be in the driver's seat. But it's like, that's not submission. True submission is you hand your man the keys to that car and say, okay, if you wreck it, it's on you, but I will do whatever you need me to do. If you want me to communicate, I'll communicate. And I don't mean this weirdly sexually unless that's your kink, whatever. What I mean is, obviously, you let your man lead. My last point is an unfortunate psychological phenomenon known as cognitive dissonance. And basically what it means is that they want time to convince themselves of something that never happened. Let me give you a real life example of this by something that happened personally. I was talking to this girl. She had to go into the hospital one of our date nights. Everything ended up being fine, but I had to go to work. She wanted me to text her or call her, whatever, while I was at work. This would have been about 3 a.m. Now, because I cared about her, I did not do that. Instead, what I did was I went home, went to bed, woke up the next day, and I tried calling her. She did not answer. I could guess she was probably pissy I didn't call her from the night before. But here's the thing. We're both adults. She'll be okay. I didn't do it from some nefarious reason or trying to play some stupid game. I just wanted her to rest, and I was at work anyway. She ignored my message that I sent her through Instagram. She ignored the call. I then texted her a little bit later that day. And I basically just told her, I hope you're doing fine, blah, blah, blah. It was great, getting to know you, all this other stuff. Nothing bad. And I kid you not, she never replied. It's like, what happened? I'll tell you what happened. Her ego got in the way. Her ego demanded that I send that fourth message. But of course it never came. And by the way, that fourth message probably wouldn't have got a reply either. It's like, how do you handle people like that? You just leave, just like I did. I didn't send her another text. I didn't call her again. I left. I learned some things about her after the fact that made me look back on her and her life and realize that her entire life was nothing but a mess, a web of lies and deceitful activity. I also heard through the grapevine that she tells everybody that I abandoned her in the hospital. Like, think about that. I texted her on Instagram, WhatsApp, and tried to call her, and she ignored all of them. This is within 24 hours of her going to the hospital, by the way. And I saw her while she was there. Think of the brainwashing that you have to put yourself through to honestly say that, oh yeah, that person abandoned me. It's like, what? But those types of women, those types of people, you will never get through to. They tell themselves that you never really cared. And they tell themselves that not because they want you to necessarily try harder. They have to tell themselves that because if they convince themselves that you didn't care, they don't have to feel bad for treating you and acting the way they did during the relationship or during the breakup. But if they truly know that you cared about them, then they have to face the fact that maybe they're responsible just a little bit for the breakup. Maybe the guy that tried to get a hold of me 3 times while I was in the hospital, maybe he did actually care about me. Maybe he did just let me sleep and he was there the very next day. Maybe I was a little bit hard on him. Maybe my ego was a little bit out of control and maybe I owe him an apology. But all of that can be side-skirted. All of that can be ignored if I just convince myself he never really cared and move on. Lil bro, lil sis, you've got this and I've got you. I'll see you in the next one.